Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the first of what I hope will be a new series of podcast-esque shows. This is NHC Presents a Chat With, and it's going to be more in the vein of the previous NHC Music podcast, where we would have various artists on the show from week to week for a chat about their work. And this evening, I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Joe Diak of the Twistettes. Joe, welcome aboard the show. Thank you very much for joining me as the first of this new series of interview shows. We will see how it goes this evening. How are you, first of all?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
It's a massive pleasure. You're obviously in the process of promoting your brand new single with the Twistettes, Tory Cunts, which came out on the 21st of June, so just 5 days ago as we were recording this. You are a musician, a producer, a DJ, a writer, a poet, a yoga instructor, and an activist. You have three musical projects at least, in addition to your DJing. Or the aforementioned Twistettes, you're the bass player for the Gyro Babies, and also the kind of more gothic electronica outfit Minerva Wakes. So lots on your plate. Let's first off start with basically an overview of kind of who you are, and if you want to dive a bit into more detail on those various projects.
Yeah, so well, the Twistettes is kind of, I guess, it has been my primary project. So that's a kind of two-piece punk, riot girl punk, psychobilly, kind of shouty but melodic kind of act. Twistettes have been around for quite a while. We've had a bit of a break between last album was 2018, and I'm hoping for next year to be the new album. We have been in recording that, so it's all recorded. It just needs kind of produced, and we're just going to release a few singles and then probably album into the next year. So yeah, that's kind of been my primary project. But then along the way, I play bass for Gyro Babies, which is obviously Mark McGee. It's his project, but I'm the bass player in that. And yeah, Minerva Wakes is it's a slightly newer thing that I'm been looking at. So over lockdown, this kind of electronic project emerged out of the ether of insanity that was lockdown, alongside a poetry pamphlet and some artwork and all sorts of kind of audio visual aspects to that project as well. That I'm kind of hoping to carry that through my other projects as well. So I guess as I'm layering up the different projects, that they're all kind of influencing each other, although they're all quite different. So yeah, Minerva Wakes has released the album. Was it 2021, I think? But yeah, I've got a bunch of new stuff for that as well, but no kind of date for an album launch for that, and it'll be after the Twistettes one. So yeah, loads of stuff kind of bubbling away, and yeah, just kind of getting back out to gigging and reminding everyone who the Twistettes are and introducing Minerva Wakes, and yeah, that's what I've been up to.
As I say, lots on your plate. I want to touch on Minerva Wakes just briefly. You mentioned that came about in 2021. I believe the project is named after a poem that you wrote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the music kind of existed in some shape or form. There was some bits of lyrics and some bits of music, and it was all like kind of felt like a real thing. But as I was working on it, I started to write this poem about the goddess Minerva, who's the Roman goddess of kind of the arts and warfare, but more like defensive warfare, as opposed to kind of like attack and warfare, and poetry, creativity, loads of stuff, loads of good shit. But I wrote this poem about the idea of the goddess Minerva awakening and something of modern times, and just wondering about and what she would think of maybe what we're doing now. I mean, the poem kind of started with that concept, and then I wrote a short story that also kind of developed the idea further, and then that's kind of become more of a fantasy, kind of weird dystopian fantasy thing. But the poem in itself just was looking at this idea of, you know, what are we doing to the world, and what would, you know, like a being like the goddess Minerva think of what humans are up to, you know. So that kind of that was written as I was writing the album, and piecing what I had of the album together, and yeah, it all came together in a weird kind of wavy, organic kind of way, that built in this story, this kind of fantasy story, that then grew arms and legs and all sorts of wings and shit. So that's it. That was how that kind of came about.
Yeah, and in the story that you wrote, Minerva developed something of a morbid fascination with humanity, a sort of equal parts disgust and desire.
Yeah.
Is that reflective of your own personal view on how society is these days?
Yeah, I mean,
Because your music at times suggests that you might just be all the way done with it, particularly the latest stuff. But like, there's a kind of a duality at play in that poem that I think is probably most present in your music in the Minerva Wakes work. But is that a reflection of you, or is that your attempt to conceptualize what that particular Etruscan goddess might think?
yeah, I mean, I guess it's a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean, I guess overall, I'm like generally, I'm not like a total nihilist. I am hopeful. There is hope, and there's so much beauty and wonder and great people and great things in the world. You know that. You know, I'm interested, and I'm like, I always feel like I've got quite a like almost like childlike enthusiasm for stuff. Like I get really excited about things, and I get really absorbed into stuff within in the world in general, you know, whether that be art or music or a part or people, or, you know, whatever kind of thing. But so I think like it probably is reflective of my personality, but I'm also like just absolutely raging at so much, and don't understand why things have to be why they are. Again, that's a kind of childlike you know, way of looking at the world, I guess. So there's an element of that within it, but then again, I guess also like thinking of zooming out and like what do you know like what is, if you were like stepped back and looking in what we do, because, you know, we all as people, even though I've like I tried to live well, and I try to be a good guy, not be a dick as much as I can, although everybody does it sometimes by mistake or whatever. But I think that even if you try to live well, you still do shitty things, and you know you're doing shitty things, but you're like, oh well, like, you know, you make excuses for yourself, and you kind of justify bad behavior, or not even bad behavior, but acting. Do you know, it's like, well, what else would I do? Do you know, like the system needs to act like this or to do this. And I guess it was just thinking of that idea of zooming out to like a goddess that has no connection to humanity or to the world, and how we engage with the world, what they would think. And I do still think they would be drawn into this kind of buzzy, like wonderful, like, oh my God, like what are they doing? This is cool. But then also might just overall be like, if that makes sense.
It does. In much the same way as the alien family, the Solomons in the Third Rock from the Sun, like interpret human behavior through the lens of aliens visiting. I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Tell me a wee bit about the music, because the music of Minerva Wakes is it's a pretty marked departure from both the Gyro Babies and obviously the Twistettes. The Gyro Babies, more Sex Pistols-esque, kind of classic punk rock. Twistettes, Riot Girl, grungy type punk. Minerva Wakes, none of these things. It's very experimental, it's very electronic, a bit more gothic in the aesthetics. Tell me about how that process came together, and how you ended up doing something so different from your normal
I mean,
project.
I guess it came from my, like, I DJ'd techno. I mean, I still DJ techno a bit, but I was primarily a techno DJ when I started DJing, and I liked really heavy, dark, kind of like not quite industrial techno. I wouldn't say it was still a bit funkier than your kind of industrial techno, but I liked kind of heavy, dark kind of techno. So a lot of those beats were like the very start of them kind of came from around about that time, and they were just in my computer, and I would maybe go back to them here and there and every few months and do something here or something there. So I think maybe that's a little bit where it comes from is that kind of dark techno. I was quite into dubstep for a phase while I was in the writing. That kind of, so that's where the kind of dubstep vibes come in, and I love trip hop music. So though all those kind of elements came together. But I mean, I think when I was writing that, I wasn't specifically thinking I will write this kind of track, this kind of album. I just came back in lockdown to, as I say, all these little bits of electronic beats that I'd written over the years that I'd not really had time and wasn't really sure what they were or if they were any good. So I just, they sat in my computer not doing much. And because I had loads of fucking time, I just ended up working through it and like picking out the bits that I liked and then kind of developing those. So I think that's why it's got that different vibe, is because it kind of comes from my dance music background. But that is also influenced by the fact that I like punk rock music, and those two have always kind of sat side by side. And I've went back and forward between kind of electronic dance music and punk rocky music throughout my kind of career, I guess, as a musician. But I mean, fundamentally, the reason that came out like that was because I wasn't able to get in the studio to play instruments. My recording setup is not amazing for recording like guitars and bass. They sounded pretty shit when I tried it. So I would have needed to get into a studio to add that kind of element to it. So that is why it's so electronic. But yeah, I like weird music. I like so it's whatever I do is always going to have an element of that. So yeah, that's kind of how that became what it is, I guess.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. Obviously, I had seen that you kind of started out DJing techno. You're probably more known for your punk rock work. Two genres that don't sound immediately as if they would have anything in common whatsoever. Punks and techno heads are really two groups of people that you would lump together. However, the origins of both genre very similar, more similar than I think most people would realise. So it's interesting because there's not many people like yourself that take both and treat them on kind of equal terms. Normally, anybody who listens to punk but listens to any techno would listen to a little bit, or anybody that's into techno would probably be completely put off by punk and the shouting involved and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting stuff. I wanted to talk about your other DJing project. It's your DJ show, Joe Jive, and the Beehive 5, I believe. And that's another kettle of fish altogether. You play largely oldies, doo-wop, etc. on that. Tell me how that came about, and has this been a long-standing passion of yours, the classic rock and roll?
Yeah, I mean, do you know, it's always been something I've always loved, that kind of music, and kind of with the Twistettes, it was a big influence actually in the style, especially the early Twistettes has got quite a big influence for that kind of music. You know, I mean, I think a lot of punk music's actually influenced by that. There's many kind of covers by kind of early punk kind of, or would you say punk, like New York Dolls, and they covered like a bunch of those songs and stuff. So a lot of those either punk or bands that influenced punk covered a bunch of those kind of 50s and 60s girl bands songs. So yeah, it was something that influenced the direction of the Twistettes to begin with. But I mean, actually playing the DJ set again, that came out of lockdown, because maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks of it, I just I was just like, what am I going to do with myself? And I just did a deep dive into that kind of music, which, like, as I say, I've always really liked it, but I just went down a rabbit hole and found hundreds of these tunes that were just fun to play. And yeah, I just got such a buzz out of finding all those kind of, I mean, a lot I play in my sets are a bit better known, because, you know, so for people to dance, but I found so many mad obscure songs that are brilliant as well. It was really good fun. And I mean, I think that I hadn't at that point, I wasn't really intending for it to be a DJ project, but I just enjoy the music so much. And one of the things about it as well is it's dead easy to DJ because you don't really beat match. You're not doing any of that kind of serious stuff of DJing, which I like started DJing on vinyl, and then I don't even like CDJs very much. It's kind of like I don't know. I like to mix vinyl and beat match with vinyl in an ideal world. So. But and it's that can be quite difficult to keep on top of the tracks and stuff. So this stuff just felt good fun. I was like, I could just go out and just have a couple of drinks while I'm doing this instead of like having to be like, right, I need to like not fuck this up kind of thing. So that was, I guess, is a combination of those that took it forward. But yeah, it's just good fun, like good sing along songs. And I think just now, things are tough for people in many ways, and I think that. As much as I could scream like Tory Cunts, like that's like a cathartic, amazing thing for people to experience, but also just having a dance and a boogie and not taking yourself too seriously as well. So I guess that for me, they feel like it feels like it's needed. I think for other people, maybe identify with that as well. So that's kind of where that comes from. But yeah, as you can tell, I've got a mad ADHD mind. It's just all over the place. I'm like, I'll just do a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that. But
yeah, I too have a mad ADHD mind. It's kind of like the immovable object hitting the the immovable object and the irresistible force. So out of all the kind of oddities and obscure 50s and 60s doo-wop and R&B tracks that you looked at and curated, were there any personal highlights for you? Was there anything that you found that was just like, oh, where has this song been all my life?
Yeah, I mean, what would I call it? I'm not very good at remembering names of tracks, and but I love. So there's a track called. I don't play this on my DJ sets because I'm a bit sad, but there's a track called "After Laughter" by Wendy Ray, which is like maybe one of my favorite songs ever. It's quite sad though, so you can't play it in a DJ set. But like, oh my god, I'm in love with that song. So yeah, "After Laughter" by Wendy Ray. There's also who does "Everybody Needs Somebody." Like I can't remember the name of that track. So there's this track called, I think it's called "Everybody Needs Somebody." Everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs a true. But it sounds like Iggy Pop or something like that. And this is like way. This is in the 50s or something. And I'm like, oh, that track's amazing. Yeah, there's like I can't think off the top of my head. Wendy Ray After Laughter I would listen to, but actually that's not one that's in my DJ set because it's a total banger. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's probably more common than we would think for punk rockers to be influenced by doo-wop. Like doo-wop and early R&B rock and roll was the progenitor in a lot of ways for what eventually became punk rock. It was the rebellious music back then. It was the kind of alternative in its time. We look at it now and we think it's oldies, it's pop music, but back then it was the devil's music. It was intensely Christian households. Were not particularly fussed with that kind of music. And obviously, like you mentioned, Iggy Pop and many other punk rock icons were inspired by and kicked into gear to becoming what they eventually were by that sort of music. I thought The Law is probably a great example, I think, of the tracks you were talking about earlier that were later covered by punk rock bands. Obviously, The Clash's iconic version of that song. So both techno and old school R&B and doo-wop have their place, I think, in the origins of punk rock music, or at least techno and punk share similar origins in terms of at least aesthetic attitude, if not the actual music that they were inspired by.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you could even say about like disco and stuff as well, because it's like like people again, disco's the same that people now think, oh yeah, it's like pop, but I mean, it wasn't at the time. It was cutting edge, really different, and people burned disco records because they thought it was the devil's music.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's actually a song called "I Shot Mr. Lee," and there's two versions of it, and I think they're totally punk rock, and it's all just this like about shooting this guy in the head and stuff. It's like almost like a rapper song, but it's these sweet kind of like these harmonies. I can't remember who does it, but yeah, "I Shot Mr. Lee," I think is the title. but yeah, it's funny and like yeah, I don't know. I think it's an amazing kind of. Well, it's not just. Guess it's not just one genre, is it? All those are like kind of mixed between different styles. But yeah, it's great. It's fun and it's interesting, and it's also like culturally relevant to kind of what was going on at the time as well, which I think's
Yeah.
I think it's important as well. So yeah, I love it.
The cultural relevance obviously being a big part of the Twistettes new single, which we will get into in a bit more detail later. But before we do, I want to talk about the Gyro Babies. They are a particularly prominent band here in Glasgow. The frontman, of course, the legendary Mark McGee. He's also a rapper. He's a podcaster. He's generally just a well-known and pretty beloved name in the Glasgow music scene. Tell me about the Gyro Babies. You've been with them on bass for how long?
About I think maybe about 8 or 9 years actually. I've been in Gyro Babies. So yeah, before that it was a guy called John McKellar who's a total legend, but couldn't do it for a variety of circumstances. And I just kind of came in as John's not able to do it just now, so will you come in and cover bass for a bit, and then just ended up staying. So I've been there since then. There's a variety of people being in and out. It's a bit of an ongoing thing with Gyro Babies that there just seems to be this rotating bunch of people. I mean, everyone's still friends. It's not that people like continually fall out. I don't think there's been any fallouts with anyone, but just for one reason or another. I mean, I guess it's difficult to maintain a band. There's 5 people in Gyro, so I guess that it's difficult to maintain everybody being on the same track and able to kind of commit in the same way or to work together for kind of any length of time. It can be difficult to do that, I guess. So I've been here for quite a while. So yeah, I love it. It's great. The music's great. Mark's an amazing lyricist, an amazing front person. It's cool he's got amazing energy for the music and passion, and I guess like a belief in the underground music scene that has really inspired me, I think, to believe in my own kind of projects external to Gyros, as well as obviously Gyros itself, and the power of kind of creating and nurturing a small but beautiful music scene that fucking love music and are into it for the right reasons. So they're all really important things, I think, to do with Gyros. New Gyros album is on the way as well. I'm not entirely sure when. Again, it's kind of like Twistettes one. So Twistettes went in and recorded our whole album in 3 days because it's just how we do it. And whereas Gyros are doing it like a couple of tracks at a time. So, but I think probably by the end of the year, I would imagine that there will be an album as well. So yeah, it's exciting times. New music all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had Landfill Culture on earlier today as I was getting ready for this fantastic song. Obviously, you play bass in the Gyro Babies. Now, in your other 2 kind of main musical projects, you're front and center. You're, you're the front person, the front woman of the Twistettes. I believe Minerva Wakes is just you.
Yeah.
So how is playing on Gyro's music? How's that different? Is it a different sort of pressure? Do you feel differently when you're approaching that?
I mean, it's less pressure because it's not, I'm kind of, you can hide in the background a bit more at a live gig. And, I guess it's as much as I'm just adding a bass line or a vocal hook or something like that, depending on what track it's been on previously. On the new album, I think I'll be doing all the bass and some of the backing vocals. So, but yeah, I mean, it's less pressure in the sense that it's not my songs. Fundamentally, it's all Mark's songs really. Although obviously, there's a couple that maybe I started with the bass line that kind of have come from me. A lot of the work has been between Mark and Mark. The other the guitarist is also called Mark. So they've done quite a lot together to start the seed of the song, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there's not as much of me out there as there is in my other projects, because it's ultimately it's Mark's project, and it's him that's out there with us kind of backing him up, and that's how it feels anyway. Do you know, as much, I'm not, like, obviously I'm as much part of it, but I just think there's something different when it's your songs and you're the front person, that you're the vocal kind of centerpiece. And I quite like it, actually. I never wanted to be a singer at all. The only reason I started singing is I was in a band years ago when I was young, and the singer left, and we had a gig coming up, and we were like, what will we do? I was like, well, I do kind of know the songs, but I'm a bit shit. And I was pretty shit at singing then. So I gave it a shot. It sounded terrible, but we didn't have another singer. So I just kind of kept doing it. And that was how I ended up singing. And I guess because I'm writing, I do poetry as well, it was a natural thing. But no, I mean, in an ideal world, I would prefer somebody else to be up front and center. So, yeah.
So before we dive into the main sort of the crux of why we're here, and you just mentioned it there, your poetry and your writing, talk to me a bit more about that. You do quite a lot of spoken word engagements, I think, as well, don't you? You wrote the pamphlet Minerva, for Minerva Wakes, that eventually kind of grew and became the electronic music project. You're also working on expanding it into a stage show.
Yeah. So that's something that I got. Like, I just applied for like a residency with Tron Theatre, because a lot of people, when they saw the stage show, so I put, it's a kind of electronic music, and I just put like a cloak on, and I'm kind of like doing a bit of this, and there's visuals in the background, so it's like kind of got kind of edited video. So a lot of people, when they've seen it, have said, it would be really cool to make that kind of bigger kind of stagey kind of theatre thing. So I did a bit of work on that, which is kind of still in process. I'm not sure exactly what way I want to take it out of the options. I really like the idea of kind of using dance quite a lot. And I've got a few friends that are dancers that I thought, so maybe it would just be about that as opposed to making it into a play. I'm not sure. It's basically, that's in progress. And it might be that it kind of like entwines with the next album as well. So there's maybe some kind of morphing of the two musical projects that then creates some kind of stage show. I'm not sure. It's like still kind of an ether. But I mean, I guess I have been developing the live show as I've been going along with this kind of audio-visual aspect, and my kind of movement. I mean, I'm not a dancer. I like to dance, but I'm certainly not a dancer. But there's been something about exploring kind of movement and just like weird kind of dancing and stuff. And like a lot of what I do, what from any of my projects, is about the idea of like being like weird and free, and just be like not being limited and constrained by society or whatever it is that you're like constrained by. So that's kind of like with Minerva Wakes and the movement. That's what I don't know. It's kind of like when I dance to electronic music and techno music, that's how I like to dance. Like, to quote Colonel Mustard, dance like no one's watching. Although someone else surely said that before, John, but like that kind of idea of like just not caring what, not dancing for the sake of somebody looking at you, but dancing for being in the music and getting and expressing yourself, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. So I can't remember. I've gone on a big tangent there, haven't I? What was I talking about?
To pick up from that, you mentioned earlier having ADHD. I have it myself, and do you, on some level, you reckon maybe that sort of the commitment to doing that sort of dancing is in some way a rebellion against the sort of stillness that is sometimes something that people with ADHD struggle with? Is that maybe an aspect of Minerva Wakes that you're kind of battling with through the movement?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, I would say so. I would say that kind of, just like, totally. It is something that I have always struggled with, especially as a child. I'm a lot better now. I can sit still for a lot longer now, but I do struggle with it. And I guess there's something in that, just like the bigness of the moves and the kind of, it's like about like getting that energy out, you know, and whatever way it can come out. And I feel like there's something in the audience kind of respond to that as well, because like there's a lot of weird creepy dancing going on in the audience when I've been playing it, which is beautiful. I love to see it, but just that kind of just properly letting loose of their bodies, you know, and not being constrained by that, because it is that feeling of like, you know, if you've got to sit still for 20 minutes with ADHD and you're like, oh my God. But I guess it's like, you know, it is a response to that. It's interesting because I've not even thought of it like that before, but I think you're right with that. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it's something I struggle with a lot. Even walking in a normal fashion is a struggle for me. I do the old ADHD hip sway when people are going past, and you know, giving people, through my utter lack of spatial awareness, I give people far too much space, and so I think they look at me and think, "What is that guy doing? What's he moving out of the way of?" But anyway, let's move on to yoga. One thing that I picked up on with regards to your yoga teaching when I was reading about it was how you like to implement sound into yoga. That's not something I've ever really heard of. Can you talk to me a wee bit about that?
Yeah, so like, I mean, I guess it's like just using, well, my first couple of yoga workshops that I did this year were like maybe an hour of yoga movement, and then what I'm calling a bass bath, which isn't that common a thing really. You get sound baths, which are maybe using like singing bowls and chimes and kind of tools, musical kind of instruments, little drums and things like that are kind of used in meditative practices quite a lot, like a shamanic drum and things like that would be things that that people would use in a kind of meditation. But I just thought, because I'm a bass player and I feel bass is very therapeutic. There's a lot of research as well on the kind of benefit of bassy sounds for the body and mind. So I just wanted to bring that and voice in as well. So it's not like a completely unusual thing. I mean, I think using a bass guitar is kind of unusual, but yeah, so I've just been using bass, a little bit of drums and a bit of vocal, and I kind of wrote a kind of bassy electronic backing track to go along with it as well. So that's what I've been doing with that. I mean, even beyond that, within my classes, I think that music's really important, which interestingly is it's quite debated within yoga whether there should be music at all. But in my opinion, music is, well, yoga is about the idea of connecting with the universe, with whatever your thing is. If you want to say, folk want to say God, then God. But I mean, that's not my bag with it. With the energy around you, with other people, with yourself, just about connection. And I think music for me is such an important aspect of connection with the world, with others, with everything, that it just makes total sense that the right music would add for people as opposed to take away. But yeah, I mean, I guess people are, when they say there shouldn't be music, what they're talking about it disrupting this kind of single pointed focus that is meant to be the point of yoga, where you know you kind of, your brain just like focuses in and one you're just like you're just being, as opposed to kind of thinking about a bunch of stuff. But I think the right music can help that to happen. Therefore is yoga, in my opinion. But but yeah, so it's that's yeah, yeah, I think it's important for me.
Absolutely. Probably also ADHD probably a factor in that as well. If my experience is anything to go by, the ability to sit and do yoga is completely hampered for me by the fact that it has to be silent. But if you really think about it, if you're connecting to the universe is music. The Om is music,
Yeah,
and so
that is what if you go back, that is what they say, isn't it? That sound was there before anything, and
exactly, yeah,
sound. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
and
I do think that it doesn't stop that single point of focus. In my opinion, it just adds to it and makes it something. It makes it more accessible for people, because I think there's this notion of things need to be difficult and you need to work really hard. And it's not that you don't need to work hard, but it's about, you know, that's not for me, it's not what it's about either. It's about finding ways that work for you to create that. Do you know what I mean? I guess unless you want to become like a Buddhist monk or whatever, but you know, even within that, sometimes it's harder and sometimes it's not. And they use music as well as part of their meditations. So that's where it comes from. That kind of music is that they'll sometimes do it, sometimes not. I think, yeah. I mean, for me, I find sitting in silence to meditate really tough, and I do try to do it sometimes because I think it's good for me to try and learn to do that a little bit. But using music and using movement in the sense of like yoga, like movements and within like yoga asana and stuff, it's like makes it much much easier for me to get the benefits of the practice, in my opinion. But yeah.
100%. That's probably that. If I don't do yoga, but if I did, that would be probably how I would do it. I would probably have to have something on, even something quite chilled out. But yeah, let's move on to the Twistettes at long last. We've only taken 40 minutes to get to the point. So you have 2 LPs and a live album, Jilt the Jive and A Strange Play. The new single is Tory Cunts, which speaks for itself. It's an angry punk rock song about how dreadful and horrific and exhausting the last 14 years have been. You wrote it 5 years ago ahead of the most recent general election. Obviously, we have a new general election scheduled for the 4th of July. Why did it take the 5 years to actually finally release this song?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've brought it out and kind of some way we did a live album over lockdown, and that was it was on that. It's not the most amazing version of the track because it's just a live song, but we released that album in lockdown because that was all we could do. But yeah, we wrote it. So 2019. I wrote it just on the day of the election. I was driving through to practice and I was driving the car. I actually went the wrong way. I was driving to Fife and I ended up going to Stirling because I missed my turn off because I was like writing this song in my head and I was totally focused on that. Then got to the practice and I was like, right, I've written this song, and like Nikki just instantly, it was one of those ones that just came together instantly. But yeah, I mean, the reason it's taken so long is the pandemic, and obviously I had back surgery as well. So 2019, I think the first time we played that song was December 2019. And then we were into lockdown after that. So we couldn't really practice very, very much because Nikki lived in Fife, so there was a lot of limitations. Me in Glasgow and Nikki in Fife, and yeah, so it was kind of that was how that kind of why it took so long. I during lockdown I ended up with a really bad back injury, leading to me needing surgery about 2 years ago, and then a bit of a recovery from that. So I didn't really bounce out of lockdown in the way that maybe I'd have hoped, and it's taken till now really to kind of get in the studio and get anything recorded. So yeah, it's taken a while. But yeah, we've got a bunch of new stuff. That is by far the oldest track that is on the new album. And I mean, actually, I'm not even 100% sure that it definitely will go on the album. We'll see how it goes. But it felt like it needed to be recorded, especially we were in the studio in May. So Michael, who we worked with, who's an amazing producer and engineer, was like, you need to record this. This has to be recorded. At the time, thinking the election would have maybe been like September, October. But so we really had to rush this out actually to get it out in time, which is a bit frustrating. But maybe it's the right thing that this is just, you know, it's quite an old track that may or may not be on the album that has been recorded. So just like chuck it out there, see what happens with it, and then I guess the rest of the stuff will be the more up to date kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
You mentioned it might or might not be on the records. Now, listening to your 2 previous LPs, in the sort of spirit of Riot Girl as it was in the late 80s and 90s. Your first two records tackle social subjects, political subjects, but more patriarchy, misogyny, in much the same way that earlier Riot Girl stuff did. Tory Cunts goes in a completely different direction and is a very kind of pointed attack on the kind of economic devastation, and the fascistic policy of the current Tory government, the incumbent and hopefully and likely outgoing Tory government. Do you feel like it's going to be difficult to keep balance to the record if you add Tory Cunts on? Because it is quite a stark departure, even from your earlier stuff, which was angry and was loud, but thematically dealt with more kind of not so much political, but more social subjects.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what's interesting? Because actually, when you listen to our albums, they're not all about kind of patriarchy and gender issues. Actually, there's some tracks that are, and I've been more maybe like our more standout tracks, I guess, are. But there, I mean, there's ones that have been slightly misinterpreted. There's a song called "Selling Skin" that's not. Obviously, I get why people think that's about maybe prostitution and stuff like that, but it's actually not. It's that's about the system and economics and stuff, because that's a pound of flesh. It's the selling skin that I'm talking about. But because we're women, a lot of our stuff is like songs like that are instantly, like if it was a guy singing that song, I think there would be more thought put into what are they actually singing about. But I think there's a few tracks that have maybe been interpreted as being about something that they're not. So it's always been about half and half, I would say. We usually have some kind of there usually is probably at least half the tracks have got some kind of like feminist kind of aspect to it. But I'm just trying to think in this new album just thinking of the tracks, are they, because it probably all is a bit of a departure from, not that we're not, we've the track that was meant to be the first single is called Big Boned, and is very much about kind of like feminine, well, I guess is it just feminist issues, but about kind of body image stuff, which I guess could be relevant to guys as well. It's relevant to guys. But yeah, so that one is very much kind of in keeping with the Twistettes kind of vibe of there's the lyric, what's the lyrics in the chorus are, I'm big bone, my eyes roll, am I too much? Well, you can kiss my hole. So that's the lyric in the chorus. So yeah, I guess that's like very much in keeping. But I would say overall, there's like a bit of a depart. There is a mixture of tracks that are down that kind of in the face kind of feminist side, which is not that we're moving away from that in our political beliefs, but it's just the tracks that we've written have a variety of different kind of topics. But like I say, it's not actually, we've always had a little bit of a mix of what we talk about. It's just that the ones that have the standout tracks, I think, for people have been the ones that are obviously about feminist kind of issues, when, you know, kind of the patriarchy and stuff, and maybe interpreting things as that when that's not really what they're about as well, which I think is kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know.
So Tory Cunts itself, it speaks for itself. It's the name is very blunt. The lyrics are very blunt, and for a pretty decent portion of it, the lyrics don't even have to speak for the actual theme of the song. The kind of howls in the early part of the song, the angry howls at the beginning of the song, sort of tell the whole story before you even started singing the lyrics. Obviously written the day of the previous election. Not much has really changed. If anything, things have only gotten worse in terms of government policy. Do you feel like I feel like this song and your band are exactly what punk rock in Glasgow needs in 2024, quite frankly. But do you feel like it was necessary to get everything out before this nightmare inevitably comes to an end in a week or two's time?
Yeah, I mean, that was another thought with it. I mean, it was, that hopefully, I mean, surely to God. I mean, not that I think it'll necessarily be much better with the other alternative. And somebody did say, because I was really in that to some, I can't remember who I was speaking to, but I was saying, you know, It's interesting because I don't know if that how relevant the song will be, you know, once we move into, hopefully we move into maybe having a Labour government for a bit. And the person was like, but there'll still be Tory cunts, Joe. And I was like, well, actually, yeah, fair. It's not necessarily as simple as it even just being about the political party, is it? But it's that overall kind of, you know, lack of empathy and care for people and lack of humanization of people that aren't maybe, you know, yeah.
Etonian billionaires.
Exactly. Aye, basically, yeah. But yeah, aye, I don't know. So we'll see what happens. But it was good to get it out before the election because it maybe does lose a little bit of it. Maybe I just need to change the lyrics to I don't know, whatever. We'll see. Keep the ass because it's going to be relevant.
Yeah. That should just be everybody's alarm clock at this point. Is just the screams from the Tory cunt single. I think you need to. There's a merchandising opportunity. You can do what you used to do with the ringtones. Like get your Tory cunts sound for your alarm clock. What was it? Usually $2.99 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was when we first played that song after lockdown. We played at a festival called Shambhala down kind of a little bit north of Bristol, and it's actually quite a hippie festival. So we were like, well, I don't know how this song will go down, but I mean, people absolutely lost their shit, and it was actually really amazing to watch from the stage, just people going wild for it. And I think it was that kind of primal scream that being allowed to release that angry energy and frustration. And maybe it wasn't about the Tories they were shouting about, but whatever personally they needed to get out, it gives it makes it okay to you know, get that frustrations out. So yeah, it was it's cool. It's a good one to play live, and you know, maybe people can put it on in their shower and just go before they leave for work or whatever.
Yeah. I myself have done just that a few times this week. What has the response been like to the single?
Yeah, good. I mean, some people didn't want to put it on their website and stuff, which I totally get as well. You know, they're like, well, we don't want to have that up. Joe, sorry. But then other people have totally loved it. So, I mean, overall, I think within our kind of circles, it's been well received. And yeah, but I mean, it's not good art if everybody likes it, is it? Anyway, it needs to have some people that are like, what's a bit uncouth, is it not? But yeah, so I think overall it's done pretty well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know that not too long prior to the release of the single, you did toy with the idea of changing the title slightly, whether it be censoring it, shortening it, or changing it to something slightly different. What ultimately led you to keep the name? Because it's obviously it's like it's sledgehammer shot to the head, blunt. It's doesn't really leave any room for ambiguity, and the content of the lyrics is unambiguous as well. Like it's basically, we hate these bastards because of how much suffering they've caused. A message that I think any right-thinking human being in these islands can get behind. What ultimately led you to keep it? Because obviously, bearing in mind that, as you say, some websites are probably not going to want to do that. I mean, because they're cowards, ultimately, is the reason for that. But
I think that we just kind of thought was we asked like some of our supporters and stuff what they thought. They were like, nah, just keep it. But like I think that we just thought they're probably not going to, the content of the song itself is already probably going to cause a problem. And do we want to, let's just say it as it is, just let's let it be out there, and obviously I understand it's a bit edgy in some ways, but I mean, is it how edgy? I mean, there's people out there, I don't know, it's a bit edgy, I guess, but I think that it's better to have the true meaning out there straight away, because that is the point of the song. It's a kick in the face. It's like, like you're not meant to be able to escape it. It's meant to make you feel uncomfortable. It's not a nice song to listen to. You know what I mean? You're not listening to it going, that's really good, isn't it? It's like it's meant to be hard, abrasive, and like have that kind of visceral reaction for people that the name is part of, I guess, as well. So that was why we kind of decided to stick with it as it was, and fuck it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. It's a necessary song, and it's a fantastic song. It's a triumph. Fantastic work. Well done on it, and I wish you all the very best success. I would be keen to find out how many of the websites that would have a problem with the title and the content have like hip hop songs by people talking about the women that they've had sex with and how many people they've shot in the head in the last week, and how much money they've made through prostitution and pornography. It would be interesting to kind of get the data on that. I think we'll kind of wrap things up there because we've been going almost an hour. Thank you so very much, Jo.
I'm just like,
is there anything else you would like anyone to know? Do you have any shows coming up or anything like that?
So we're playing at Kilburn if you are going to Kilburn, we are playing on Friday the 5th in the Smugglers Tent. But the Twistettes are at 8 o'clock and Gyro Babies are at midnight. So if you are going to Kilburn, along with the Smugglers Tent for those two. And then the next Twistettes one is the 27th at Wee Red Bar in Edinburgh, 27th of July. That was meant to be, well, I mean, it still is a single launch party. It's just because the election was announced so quickly, we had to kind of push forward. So it's like almost ended up being like a month's celebration of this song, which is fine. Maybe that's the way we'll do them all. I don't know, but so that will be good. It's with a band called Blonde Secret and two others that I should get notes up because I can't remember. Blonde Secret are kind of organising it. So so that is the 27th. Then we have Equinox Festival, which is down south, and that's all we have in just now. But we are in the middle of booking quite a good gig, or kind of charity thing, in September in Glasgow. So I think it's September the 7th, with a band from London called Gum Disease that are really cool. So I believe that's going to be broadcast on the 7th of September if you're in Glasgow. So that's where we're up to at the moment, but we will be organising a tour, and we have got singles that will be coming out, so there'll be a whole bunch of stuff, but that is what we've got just now. Gyro Babies are also playing Lindisfarne Festival, as well as Equinox and Kilburn. So we've got a bit coming up. But the other thing to mention is there are Tory Cunts t-shirts. They're on my website, so jodiarc.co.uk, in the shop, in the Twistettes. But there's Tory Cunts t-shirts if you want to buy one of them to have some like good gear to wear on election day. Then that's an option.
Wear it to the polls and get them kicked out. That sounds like a plan. Thanks again so much for joining me, Jo. I'll let you get on with your evening. Folks, please let us know what you thought of this chat. We're hoping to do some more. We will see. This is the first one, and I was woefully unprepared because I've had the bastard of all bastards of hay fever attacks going on today. So it was great.
Chat. You've been great to talk to, John. Thank you for having me. And I thought it was a good, enjoyable interview. So thank you.
Feelings mutual, Jo. Thanks so very much.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.